So what does $315 get you from Represent? Let's take a look.
I'm Joe. I've been in manufacturing for over a decade, and I've overseen the production of millions of products all over the world. And on this show, we take apart pieces from your favorite brands, see if the quality is there, and I'll let you know if it's worth your hard-earned money. This is Industry Secrets.
All right, we are back. This is Industry Secrets. What do you got for me this week, Zach? Okay, Represent. Another community request. If you guys have items you want us to review, get your requests in, vote on them, and that's how the media team actually ends up acquiring all these. This is the Represent Classic Parts Quarter Zip in washed black. How much was this?
$315.
$315, okay. So this is made in Portugal. This is 100% cotton. The rib has 95% cotton and 5% elastane. So that's really nice in terms of recovery. When you get a 100% cotton rib, the rib structure itself has mechanical stretch. But what ends up happening is it doesn't recover and you get these really sloppy, sad, I always call them like wizard sleeves when you don't have elastane in the ribbing to provide that recovery. So nice design choice there. This is definitely a oversized fit. A terry cotton that has been washed. A little bit of oil stains here. This is a medium. Nice. They have a Riri zipper. You're gonna have a lot of different zipper companies, but typically the top three, you're gonna get Riri, which is gonna be your more high-end artisanal kind of zippers. And then you're gonna have YKK and you're gonna have SBS. We have a metal clip for the Represent branding on the bottom ribbing. I'm not a huge fan of these. I know that people like the aesthetic of it. Over time, what I find is these actually end up falling off and you end up with fabric here with holes in them. And in the wash, this can get moved around a lot in terms of the ribbing. And you'll see here, if I even just pull like this, the way that this metal embellishment works is because it has those teeth, once you've reset it, it's never gonna really get back there. You have to open it up and make it bite on again. So what I would have done instead is go with a metal embellishment with a rivet style. I get it when you flip up the branding, you can see on both sides, but most of the time you're actually not gonna be flipping it up. So we have a crack print for the front, the arm, and the chest. The way a crack print is, you're basically going to be doing the artwork. You may have some of the distressing elements in the actual artwork itself before you do the print, but then once you're done, worker's gonna pull these apart. And you can hear that there. You'll basically crack the print to make it look a lot more distressed. Oh, that's good ASMR. Nice arm print, horizons. So I know a lot of brands watch us, and when it comes to designing garments like this, when you are doing stuff on a ready-made blanks, you're gonna have a lot of difficulty in terms of alignment, making sure things are straight, just because when you're doing something on a finished garment and you're loading it onto the screen, there's gonna be some twisting, some torquing there. When you're seeing brands execute stuff like this, especially arm panels, larger prints as well, these are all gonna be done on the panel piece itself before you actually sew it together. It just allows you a lot more ability to make sure that that print is square and centered. So if you do own a brand that graphics are a big part of what your brand does, what I would say is whenever you get the opportunity to start custom cut and sew, take that opportunity because it just opens up a whole new horizon in terms of being able to design and create additional screen print or pretty much any branding elements for your clothing. No, it's here too. Okay. When it comes to the neck collar here, what they've done, they've actually taken a design element that you're gonna see in a lot of contemporary men's fashion in terms of like suiting and woven products, and it's this collar stand here. And what that does is it ensures the collar on the back stays a little stiffer, so you have a nice clean edge when it's laying on the body. So what happens is if you don't have this patch here, The fabric itself is quite flowy, and you're just gonna have a very limp collar. What a lot of brands will do to mitigate that is put interfacing in there. And what interfacing is a bonded layer of fabric that basically stiffens all of it. By having that additional collar stand, you're able to stiffen the back, but you're able to have the rest of the collar quite flowy and not stiff, which is a nice kind of design element you don't typically see in a lot of knits. We have the Represent branding in a damask woven on the neck. I like how they took the additional step to put a twill tape over the zipper here on the edge. The ribbing, I would say, on the bottom is quite short, but that's a design choice. So I can see just a little sewing defect here on the bottom hem, where you can see that in terms of this profile, this is shorter than here. So what happened is whoever is doing the serging here went off track a little bit, and that caused the ribbing to be a little shorter there. Very minor, I would say it's still commercially acceptable. And they've taken the time to double needle cover stitch all of their serge except for the side. So when you are joining two layers of fabric, this overlock serge seam is typically what you're gonna be using. So this is the same seam over here, is the same seam that's connecting the arms. But what they've done is they've actually folded it down and they've put a 2 needle cover stitch on it. So it holds that seam nice and flat. It's a design choice that you have to make sure that you're finishing the garment nicely. That way you don't have the serge seam that's kind of free to move everywhere. And oftentimes, if you don't actually fix that, that's when some points of failure can happen in terms of the fabric, or in terms of when you're doing washing, it can cause a lot of shrinkage and uneven seams when it comes to the overlock. But overall, initial impressions, I think if you look at what they're trying to execute here for a vintage mechanics kind of quarter zip, I think they've done a pretty good job in terms of being able to execute on that. What I would say is the fabric itself, the terry, has quite a rough hand feel, but that kind of lends to the vintage aesthetic. And obviously it's gonna be a little rougher due to the washing process. A little bit uneven washing here, but again, I think that just further enhances the design characteristics. You have some untrimmed threads here and there, which is something that could be improved on by the garment factory. But overall, I would say it's pretty decently constructed. They've taken the steps to choose to make design elements that would not necessarily be noticed by most customers. I think if they were trying to execute this design on the cheap, they could have done that without, for example, having the collar stand here without doing the cover needle stitches. So the designers here definitely took a little bit more time in terms of putting their thought processes into this garment. Again, the only thing I would say that I would like to improve is just this little embellishment. While it looks cool, there's just better ways to execute that. So overall, I think in terms of what the brand's trying to do here of the executing of this garment, they've done a pretty decent job at it. So up next, let's cut this up. I'm gonna show you all the panel pieces you need to make this garment. I think you're gonna find a lot of interesting pieces here in the collar. Before we do, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and leave in the comments any other brands that you want us to take a look at, or anything you want to learn in terms of manufacturing clothing. I guess we're cutting it up. First here, let's take off the hang tag. A nice pin here. Represent is the embodiment of relentless effort, refinement, and constant progression.
Each piece is the result of meticulous design.
That is good ad copy there. We have the main label here. Let's open up this actually element right here. I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about earlier. So see here, actually even in this, they're not even using teeth that will actually grab into the fabric. This is really just kind of slipped on and it's friction fit. So when you look at this branding element, because the way it is, and it doesn't actually have sharp teeth that bites into it, it's basically just friction fit with these somewhat serrated teeth. Again, what's gonna happen over time is this is just gonna fall off because it's not permanently mounted to the garment. It's literally just there based off of friction. In the wash over time, this will just come off. While a nice branding decision, it's not gonna be something that's gonna last a long time. I'm gonna open up the collar here. Okay, so they actually have put additional interfacing in here. You can see this interfacing. Because the internal fabric here on the collar is a single jersey, it's fairly loose knit. The interfacing is going to be bonded and glued to that fabric. So the brand, in terms of choosing this interfacing, had to choose basically how stiff they want the fabric on the collar to be. Because if they actually made the collar too stiff with the interfacing, it would feel quite awkward around the neck here because you're gonna have a very much like a dress shirt stiff collar. Whereas here, you're still having a little bit of flowiness, but with just the interfacing and getting that stiffness plus flowiness, it probably wouldn't have stood up on the back, which is why they did the additional collar stand. This is the single jersey that they're using for the inside of the collar. It's fairly lightweight single jersey. If they were to actually use the same terry fabric on the back side, the collar might be a little too stiff, which is why they made the decision to go with that. Because now you have one piece of fabric that is unique to this style. So either the brand itself is making enough of these that they're able to do a small production run of just the single jersey for the inside of the collar, or they're utilizing this fabric that's either in stock or from another style, which it's fairly lightweight. I don't think it would be suitable for anything other than a really lightweight shirt. Then this is the interfacing on the inside of the collar. I do like how they went with the twill tape here for the zipper, just so you don't have an exposed edge on it. We have the rear zipper here. Do you think people care if I cut or just like how I dissect? Here is the remainder of the collar. Wrong day to wear a white shirt. Got a little bit of body hair in here, or arm hair. It's got some Portugal hair been with us. Here's the front pocket. So typically when you're doing an additional wash on a garment, what you're doing is you're taking the base fabric and you're stripping away some color, putting it through sometimes an enzyme wash, sometimes stone washes, sometimes acid washes to create a vintage-like aesthetic. And a lot of times you can see the original base fabric color in seams because the distressing process does not penetrate that fully into the thicker parts of the garment. You can see somewhat of the original color, but it's still fairly faded. So I'm gonna say that this fabric has actually gone through quite a long washing process to get this aesthetic. And you'll be able to see even more when I open up this rib. So as I peel back the layers, you're gonna see it get darker and darker. You see the contrast here between what's been washed and what was original. There you have it. These are all the components you need to make this quarter zip from Represent. Next, I'm gonna see what the weight of this fabric is, and then I'm gonna give you my final score and I will tell you what I think this costs to make. Okay. $498. So I assume they're going for 500 GSM there. So with what I see here, with the fabric weight in mind, the choice of the Riri zippers, the printing here, I could see this costing $25 to $30 to make in Portugal. One thing I'm seeing a lot these days is a lot of brands trying to move a lot of production to Portugal because a lot of streetwear brands are doing it, and Portugal has become a textile powerhouse just because a lot of times when they can execute on the items that they're trying to create. It's closer to a lot of European brands, and Portugal has one of the lowest minimum wages in all of the EU. So with all those things combined, you're able to get a product, if you're in a European brand, that's faster in terms of delivery time. It's still fairly low cost labor, and you're able to get pretty decent knits, especially if you're doing a lot of streetwear and a lot of single jersey and terry fabrics. Where Portugal, I find, is going to fall a lot short is if you're doing a lot of technical garments. The technical garment industry there just isn't mature enough for you to be able to get a lot of bonded shells, jackets. Those stuff are going to be better suited for regions with more mature industries. So when it comes to the fabric of this, what I would say is I'm going to give this a 7. I think it's a decent option. They could have gone with a fabric with a little bit more of a softer hand feel in terms of their loops as well in the back, but it does lend itself to the design characteristics being a more vintage. So I'm gonna give it a 7. In terms of its workmanship, there's definitely things that could have been improved upon. There's still some slight defects here in terms of the bottom ribbing, the untrimmed threads here and there. Overall, it's pretty decent. I'm gonna give it a 7 for workmanship. So in terms of design, when we look at this holistically of what they're trying to execute on, which was a kind of mechanic inspired quarter zip that has a vintage feel, they took the time and effort to put in the double needle cover stitches on the arm sleeves, on the bottom hems. They did a nice clean finish on the collar. The choice to put a collar stand on the back of the collar was a deliberate decision. So I don't see a lot of improvement that you can make in terms of the design here. What I would say is having a better choice of the Represent branding itself would go a long way to make this something that just lasts a lot longer. So I'm gonna give this a 9 for design. And finally for value, this is $315 Canadian. I think it's quite expensive for a garment like this. However, this goes to the argument where if you want a shirt with this kind of vintage branding on it and you want the Represent brand, the price you pay is kind of like the price you have to pay. That being said, I know Represent does massive sales at the end of the season, and a lot of people just wait for those sales. So for value here, I'm gonna have to give it a 6. That being said, if you get this at an end of season sale, it might be a decent pickup for the price. So for final score, you can check it over here. Let us know what other products you want us to review on the show. All the requests come from the community, and you guys have had some great suggestions so far. Until next time.
If you guys want to see more behind the scenes secrets on the fashion industry and learn more about how to create products and brands, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out these videos.